screen sharing this afternoon. Thanks for coming to my class, which I don't remember what I called it, but let's call it the spiritual practice of good actions. What we're going to be looking at today and learning together, and you're going to help me, is as we are in the month of Elul, preparing ourselves for the high holidays, preparing ourselves to stand before God, preparing ourselves to begin a new year, right? What are the actions we are able to take to ensure that we are going to have a good year? And the goal, one of the goals of the high holidays is to change. Yes, maybe? Yeah, tell me what the word Shana means. Shana Tova.
Head.
Head? I don't know. What is that? Shana is a head?
No, that's Roche.
I don't speak
Roche.
Shana is a year. Shana is a year, but I have a question. Yeah, so we don't talk about this a lot, but our Hebrew speakers at the room,
To repeat something.
it could mean to repeat or to learn also, by the way.
The shanot.
Right? But it also means to change. Change, to do shinui is to change. So it's not just that we should have a good year. It's that we should have a good change. Shana Tova can mean to have a good change. And we can look at all the external forces going on in our world that we hope will change, both in America and especially in Israel. All right, but also potentially within ourselves. So what we're going to do for the next hour or so is to look at a couple of ways that the rabbis of the last 1,000 years have proposed we're able to change, and some contemporary ones. So is it easy to change?
No.
No.
You're
Right?
not.
This is a endeavor that we have been attempting to do and trying to do in our greatest over the last many 1,000 years. And thanks to Murray for doing lunch today. Thank you, Murray. And because of Lisa's daughter's getting married actually today. So, yeah, so thank you, Murray. Yeah, Sheila?
Well, I think you say it's not so easy to change. Sometimes it's not that we don't want to change and that we don't do it. Sometimes people don't allow us to change.
Oh, people don't allow us. I'm not sure what the rabbis, we're gonna look later.
Well, but the rest of the world doesn't allow us to change much.
Okay, the rest of the, personally? Like now we're talking, I want to zoom in on personal change, right? I don't want to look at national change and world change and like, now we're gonna talk about personal change. So, what inspired the title of my class, which I don't even remember what the title is this book called The Spiritual Practice of Good Actions, Finding Balance Through the Soul Traits of Musar, by Dr. Greg Marcus, not Rabbi Greg Marcus, Dr. Greg Marcus, who has an organization called the American Musar something, American Musar. So let's define the word Musar for a second. Musar means ethics. Is that what somebody said? Ethics. Okay, so, right, Musar is a category of Jewish learning and Jewish practice that is focused on refining our traits. Spiritual ethics is oftentimes what we say. And this is American Musar. So what Greg Marcus does is sort of take contemporary life and try to bring in 1,000 years of rabbinic ethical work and meet in a place. So if you go to this website, americanmusar.com, you can take a soul trait quiz, which looks at 13 different qualities, 13 different traits, and it maps what your strengths are and what you got to work on. So this is an example. If you can see the screen, right? This is, I don't know who took it, maybe him, right? So these are all these different traits and how they play out in his own personality. Within our personality, do you know people who are strong on enthusiasm, but maybe not as strong in gratitude? You know people that way, or patience, right?
Rabbi,
Right, so, yeah.
what is the significance of the blue dashed circle versus where he actually fell out?
I'm not sure, yeah.
Because that kind of implies if the blue
Yeah,
dash.
there's a
circle were,
baseline.
An ideal, that he seems to have too much gratitude. Can you actually
so-
have too much
So,
gratitude?
yeah, he doesn't have he did, on his website, he doesn't have a chart, but he talks about, and we're actually, when we get into the sources in a couple of minutes, in particular, Maimonides, Rambam, who we're gonna look at, believes that every soul trait, and Rambam has he says deot is his word for soul trait, every quality, every soul trait is a spectrum. And if you are at an extreme of either too much or too little, that's problematic. And you should always aim to be in the middle,
So
right?
he's
So
a
for example,
reptilian.
patience, right? This is just one that Greg Marcus gives in his book. And you can see, if you can see here, there's like this arrow back and forth, right? And he says you should aim to be in the middle, right? If you are, right, if you are too patient, you're never gonna do anything, right? You're just waiting and waiting and waiting, right? Or like, right, you don't move. Right? Nothing ever happens if you're too patient, but if you are impatient, right? And I don't know what a good word for is extremely impatient, right? Then pushy, right? Chutzpahdik, I don't know, right? Right? But if you are fully impatient, that's also not healthy. So I think, without looking, David, I think that that's this, what Maimonides would call Benoni. Right, the center point is the ideal for all these. Same thing with silence, right? Like, right? There is a time to speak, correct?
So is this Aristotelian, like the golden mean?
Yeah, this is, yes, there's a lot of Aristotle that comes out in this, yes. Yeah. So I just brought this as an example. I've read the book, it's interesting. I don't think it's groundbreaking, but it was, you know, for someone who is getting into the idea of the spiritual ethics and character refinement. Improving our character, it actually is really good. So here's another example. Truth. Too much truth means that you are always telling people what they did wrong. Right? He says hurtful speech, right? If you are too true, too honest, right, that can actually sever relationship.
All brides.
Right? And people will stop listening to you, right? They will tune you out if you are too truthful. But if you are not as truthful, people are not going to trust you, right? Right? So is there a medium, right? When you are truthful enough, I don't know, obviously rabbis would say you should always be truthful. This is more in that I would also put that in the silence category, like when to speak and when not to speak. But there's a middle ground. Yeah. Yeah.
Ecclesiastes. You can be 100% truthful if you know how to say it.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. There's a skill, but that's a skill, right?
Yeah.
So in a minute, we're gonna look at if it's really a skill or if it's genetic. We didn't get there yet, right? So do we believe that we have genetic predispositions to different qualities? of traits?
Absolutely.
Or are we taught that by the environment that we are raised in? Right? We haven't talked about that yet, but the rabbis actually addressed that, right? Or is it a character trait that we can refine? It's probably yes to all of them.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Right? Or is there a role model that we can base ourselves off of? Right? To learn these
And it's
traits.
all, the role model is, everybody's got a different role model.
everyone, yeah.
You might, in
yes.
other words, you might not like your role model. I mean, I'm sorry, we're going back to politics and, you know, the world, but again, the role model for some people is obnoxious to some other people.
Yes, right, no, but I'm not saying who the role model is, but I'm saying, is there a role model for a character trait?
Yeah.
Right, if you wanna pattern yourself, right, whatever trait we're looking at, is there someone that represents the ideal of that? The ideal of that trait? And it doesn't need to be a famous person, right? It could be a person within your orbit. Also, right, there are people in this synagogue community, I think, that are ideals in, you know, I just took off the 13 traits, but I think there are people that I could pinpoint who I would want to pattern my life after for one of those traits,
That's it.
right? Generosity, calmness, right? Right? Again, that silence, like when to talk and when not to talk. You know, all these different qualities. I think there are people we can strive to learn from and strive to be. It doesn't mean that we're talking about Thomas Edison and ingenuity, right? Or, you know, whatever, like, yes, there are also famous people that we can pattern ourselves after. Yes, and then we'll actually get to some text. Yeah.
Bob got onto how you language something can make a difference, but I'd like to add on to that. You can language something wonderfully, but the tone of voice in which something is expressed can make a big difference.
Yes, yeah, and that's how to, that's gonna be this parsha. If you want, you know, a 10-second tie into Parshat Ki Tavo, which we're going to be reading, right? Ki Tavo is one of the two places in the Torah that has a section called Tochachot, which is rebuke, right? Which are these statements that are warnings that if the Israelites don't behave properly, right, these are the curses that are gonna befall them. Right, and in the Torah reading, how is that said?
Softly.
They are said soft, yeah, this is, right, you're always supposed to listen intently to the Torah reading during the service, but these are the two sections that are whispered. Because even though they are rebuke, right, it's said in a way, right? The whisper, I always take the whisper, not that it's a hot, there's two ways to take it. These curses or warnings can be whispered for two reasons. Reason number one is we don't want it to happen, right? We're saying it, but we're saying it softly as if we're barely saying it, right? You shouldn't hear it because it's like bad luck, poo, 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 right? But the other reason is if you're listening to someone, it's someone that you want to listen to, they get soft. Right? And they're really saying something that's important. When you get soft, you're really gonna and you're gonna say, this is something I need to really listen to. Right? It can either be screamed or it could be said softly. And I know, like, think about those people who are special to us, who also put us in our place sometimes, right? They can scream something at us.
Yeah.
Or they can say it calmly, softly. And sometimes when you say it calmly and softly, that actually has the most reverberation. It has the strongest effect on us. Okay, that was the end of our connection to our parsha. Okay, we are going to look at these texts that Rabbi Shai held, one of my teachers, mentors, and friends, put together. And the idea that he poses is, why don't people change? And how it is possible to change. And so that's what we're gonna look at, right? So, okay, so we're gonna look at this first text. So our opening text is from the Rambam, from Maimonides, about 1,000 years ago, written in Egypt. Hilchot Deot, the laws of. Now, if I was gonna say the word Deot, what would you translate it as?
Opinions.
Opinions, what else? Da'at, knowledge, right? Opinions, knowledge, right? But here,
Experience also.
experience, but here, Rambam, the great Maimonides, takes this word Deot and he has a new meaning for it, which is character development, character traits, soul qualities. So, and if you know what, this is from the Mishnah Torah. The Mishnah Torah is what type of text?
What do you mean?
What type of, what? That's what it means, but the book, the collection called Mishnah Torah from Maimonides is from the Rabbanim. I'm probably not answering the right question. This is a law code. This is halacha.
Okay.
This is Jewish law.
I can read
So
that.
I know.
if I wanted to know what Maimonides says about a kosher thing, says about a prayer, says about giving tzedakah, says about whatever, I would go to the Mishnah Torah. This is a law code. This tells me what the laws are. So it's very interesting. This is one of the opening sections of a law code. The opening section of a law code is, how do I make myself better? If you are going to construct the Bill of Rights or some constitutional document or a law code, would you open it with, you can be a better person? Or is it going to be like, this is what you're supposed to do in traffic court and this and that, right? So it's very interesting that this Jewish law code opens with how you're supposed to live your life as a human being, with your traits, your qualities. Okay, someone want to read the English, number one? You either look at the screen or the piece of paper. Anyone want to read?
I'll start.
All right, Nina.
Where each and every person, is anybody online and can they
Yeah,
hear?
they can
We're
hear.
having trouble. They can read.
They can hear, right? The green light
We can
means
hear.
that.
We can hear, we can hear.
Green light means that there are, I don't know if you know the room, right? There's a mic in the ceiling that goes to this half of the room and forward, and that's why the green light. Red light there means back there, they can't hear.
We
Okay,
can hear.
Great.
All right, go for it.
Each and every person possesses many character traits. Each trait is very different and distant from the others. One type of person is wrathful. He is constantly angry. In contrast, there is the calm individual who is never moved to anger, or if at all. He will be slightly angry, perhaps once, during a period of several years. There is the prideful person and the one who is exceptionally humble. There is the person ruled by his appetites. He will never be satisfied from pursuing his desires. And conversely, the very pure of heart, who does not desire even the little that the body needs. There is the greedy person who cannot be satisfied with all the money in the world. As Ecclesiastes states, a lover of money never has his fill of money. In contrast, there's the person who puts a check on himself. He is satisfied with even a little, which is not enough for his needs. And he does not bother to pursue and attain what he lacks. There's the miser who torments himself with hunger, gathering his possessions close to himself. Whenever he spends a penny of his own, he does so with great pain. Conversely, there is the spendthrift who consciously wastes his entire fortune. All of the traits follow the same pattern of contrast. For example, the overly elated and the depressed, the stingy and the free-handed, the cruel and the soft-hearted, the coward and the rash, and the like.
Okay, this is how he opens his law code, with the statement that people have all different types of qualities and traits, right? These are the extremes, correct?
Yep.
Right? He's taking a quality and he's showing, right? You can go one way with it, you can go the other way with it. He's setting things up, by the way. He's setting up for the second teaching. Any comments before we go to the second teaching? Do you know people like this
Absolutely.
that we're talking about?
Yeah.
Or ourselves.
Yeah, or ourselves, right? Okay, here we go. This is his, he set you up for number two.
Want me to keep going?
Sure, between.
Between each trait and the contrasting trait at the other extreme, there are intermediate points, each distant from the other. With regard to all the traits, a person has some from the beginning of his conception in accordance with his bodily nature. Some are appropriate to a person's nature and will therefore be acquired more easily than other traits. Some traits he does not have from birth. He may have learned them from others or turned to them on his own. This may have come as a result of his own thoughts, or because he heard that this was a proper trait for him, which he ought to attain. Therefore, he accustomed himself to it until it became a part of himself.
Comments, reactions, thoughts?
Nature and nurture.
Exactly.
And
Nature and nurture, right? So this is 1,000 years ago. This isn't like, Dr. Spock or something.
but he
right?
was a doctor, right?
He was a
Yeah, he was.
physician, and a rabbi.
Maybe
Yeah.
he knew a little something about the.
Yeah, maybe he knew a little
genetics
something,
and-
right? So he's saying,
It's like the scientific method in advance of anybody identifying it as a scientific
Yeah.
method.
yeah, right? So he talks about, right, the friends that we keep, right, what we're born with, okay? Okay. Right, learn from others, right? So that's the environment piece talking about. Well, what's the last line?
Well, because he heard.
Yeah, the last, after the therefore.
Practice makes perfect.
Practice makes, he accustoms himself to it until it becomes a part of himself. Right,
Good
what
or
would we,
bad.
what?
Good or bad.
Okay, I don't think that's what he's saying.
But you get accustomed to it. If people keep telling
Yeah.
you you're beautiful, you begin to believe you're beautiful sometimes. Or if you get told, like favorite one, you're stupid or you're ugly, you begin to believe it after a while.
So what I want to zoom in on here is, do we have the ability to change based on this? Based on this teaching right here?
Yes, yes, I would think so.
Okay, what words tell you that?
Until it became a part of himself.
Yeah, he accustomed himself, right?
Yeah.
You took on a habit, right? So that's really what I want to talk about here. It's like, can we learn new habits?
Yes.
Can you teach an old dog a new trick, right? Can we change, right? This is saying that, at least my understanding of this is genetics, environment, modeling, right? Those all are changeable. Maimonides doesn't say that you're done, right? Like, yes, even from conception, this may be the way that you are, right? Or
But he
Your
also
parents-
says that in that part of this, that it's about, he then goes on to say that the traits can be acquired more easily than other traits, which implies that as your husband, Rabbi Hector, blessed memory, says, if you have a predisposition in a certain direction
Yes.
that you want to change, so that you might have more of a struggle than somebody else,
100%.
but still do the struggle.
100%, right, they're right, but Maimonides doesn't say you're locked in. For none of these, right?
Right.
He says change, it's not gonna be tough. Change is possible. And the one liner at the top, which this is where we get the thing that each trait has an extreme,
Mhm.
right? And there are intermediate points. He doesn't say here later, he says the intermediate point is actually the ideal.
I think that this is built into Judaism,
Yeah.
that there's always a possibility of change as long as you're living.
Right, hard but not impossible. Right, we are not finalized yet, correct? Right, we have the ability to change. Any other comments? Yeah.
Because you mentioned that these are part of the laws.
Mhm.
So I think attaining the balance, the checks and balances is very appropriate for our personal behaviors.
Yes,
Personally checking it and maybe collectively.
right, because he didn't believe that being a law-abiding Jew, right, that your own personal ethics and your spirit and your character traits are separate, right? You might know, right? Some people are very diligent about Shabbos or kosher, but their personal qualities, their traits may not be as diligent on, right?
Correct.
Right? They may be impatient and rude, right? And go down the list of all those extremes of the qualities that we said, but they are very fastidious on keeping law.
Well, like the statement of teach your children diligently. People may teach, but they're not diligent about it.
Yeah.
It kind of comes and goes.
Yeah.
Seems to me there are three things that come to mind in terms of change. One, a desire to change.
Yep.
Two, a commitment, and desire and commitment, yes. And forgot the third.
Yeah, right. So from this, I think Maimonides is saying we are not finished products. We can change.
You know, I forgot
Yeah.
the third part. To use a trite expression in psychology these days, mindfulness.
Yeah.
We have to be, if Tzitzis remind people of the mitzvah, it would seem to me that every moment of the day, when we we interact with people, which is supposed to be important, we need to be mindful of how we are interacting with them.
I think opportunity also has to play into change.
Yeah, of course. Yes, yes, we need that. So I want to go to option, what he says is option, we're gonna skip option 2 today, but we're gonna go to his option 3. Freedom is a project. Rabbi Soloveitchik in his book on repentance has this quote. Someone want to read this quote in English? Sherry?
The assumption that man is free, that he has been endowed with the spiritual courage to make choices and with the power to determine the fate of his religious and moral life. This assumption cannot rely on the idea of belief itself. It also depends on knowledge, on a feeling of being wholly charged by the tension present in this God-given factor of free choice. Free will should implant in man a sense of responsibility. That is the meaning of Maimonides to know, the continuous awareness of maximal responsibility by man without even a moment's inattentiveness. It is a positive commandment to be conscious of the existence of free choice, which makes man responsible for his actions. One is forbidden to take one's mind off the principle of free choice, for it was not given to man only from without, I lost my place here, or by tradition. It is also something in the nature of self-discovery and must always remain part of the self, the knowledge that man can create worlds and destroy them.
All right, what do you think this means? Not easy. Not an easy thing to understand. What do you think this means? The assumption that man is free, that we have been endowed with the spiritual courage to make choices and the power to determine the fate of our religious and moral life. This cannot rely on the idea of belief by itself. Is freedom something we have or freedom something we have to work towards? According to this reading.
Given the kind of world we're in right now, the question is always, are we making choices of things? And using opportunities are there and people still turn away, and doing something wrong is, it could have been a choice, but we're not availing ourselves of it.
It also may be raised in the inverse of another kind of comment on freedom, which is that you constantly have to work at it or it's lost.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about that.
Yeah, oh yeah, big time. So what do you think this middle section is? The meaning of Maimonides to know, a continual awareness of maximal responsibility by man without even a moment's inattentiveness. It's a positive commandment to be conscious of the existence of free choice, which makes man responsible for one's actions. how conscious are you of of free will? And that we are free to make our own choices? Do we think about that a lot?
I think
No.
we as Jews in a sense do, because that's, it seems to underlie a lot of the discussion we end up having on Shabbat in particular, but even during the week about what it is we're supposed to be doing. On the other hand, the way he phrases this, a constant, no inattentiveness even for a moment, is that an ideal or is that a insurmountable challenge?
Right.
Because I can almost hear some people responding to something like that, that's too much. That's, that kind of sense of responsibility would be crushing. I don't I'm not gonna agree or disagree, but I think that might be one alternative, and the other alternative would be to ignore it altogether, which I think is probably what a lot of people do. If you tell people every action you take, is a responsible choice.
Right.
I think a lot of people don't want to be responsible, so they don't even think about being
I
responsible.
agree with that. What do you think about this line? It's the last line. It is something in the nature of self-discovery that must always remain a part of oneself, the knowledge that we can create worlds and destroy them.
It's putting a
It's
big
very
responsibility on us.
Okay, but what about this nature of self-discovery?
Well, I think we have to continuously look inside. I think when God gave us free will and gave us humanity, it's a heavy responsibility that he laid on us.
So-
And especially in the Jewish context.
So we think that Rav Soloveitchik here, now remember, this is his book about Teshuvah. This is his book about how to repent, how to change oneself, how to prepare for the holidays, right? So in this book, he's saying that we have an obligation to continually self-discover ourselves. Right, which means that we have to look inside and see what we need to change. And that change is possible. It's a mitzvah to do that. Yeah, Bob?
Well, I kind of disagree, but I think we set ourselves up for behavior without thinking. Like we have an expected behavior that comes with marriage.
Yeah.
So when you get married, your behavior is different than it was when you were single. So I finished work, it's Friday, and I got my paycheck in my hand. Do I go out to the bar and party
Yeah.
and see that stream of activities? Or do I head home for home and family?
Yeah.
So we prescribe our actions without thinking about them in sets or groups based on where we've already made prior decisions.
Well, let's read the next source. Yeah, and we're actually gonna get there. And how do we habituate ourselves into a routine where we make a change? That's the question. So do we have another reader? Thank you. Let us, yeah.
Examine ourselves. How often do we make use of our freedom, our choice, personal disposition, education, habit, and interests maintain almost absolute rule over us from childhood to old age. It's even possible for a person to go through his or her life without ever making use of her freedom. If we really examine ourselves, we'll see that we use our freedom only on rare occasions. Freedom is given, and yet in practice, personal disposition, education, habit, and interests carry the day. whether in large faithful decisions or in small day-to-day work. And where is freedom? It is clear from this that freedom is not all part of humanity's daily spiritual bread. It is rather one of the noble virtues which one must labor to attain. It is not lesser than love. And cleaving to God, acquiring which clearly demands great effort. We can acquire freedom, and therefore we must acquire it.
So, right, what Rav Hutner is saying here is that we have the ability to be free, but what does it mean to be free?
Free to follow the commandments. Free
I think it's saying more than that.
to
Yeah.
live within. Free, well, I guess free to make up our mind whether or not to do A or B.
Yeah, yeah.
I think he's saying that basically freedom is hard. Change is difficult because we have constraints around us, who we are, things that have from childhood on, things that are imposed upon us, or we impose upon ourselves with society. And that becomes, to me, he's almost saying, this is more of a pragmatic. Because he's, because wealth is, I mean, I'm not sure when this was written, but perhaps saying that we should strive for change, but we have to be aware that it may not be that easy. Whereas I think the other ones, in fact, we're saying, we have the freedom.
Yes.
We have to. He's kind of away taking, to me, he's taking away the idea of looking inwards. He's basically looking all outward, that you could change, but there's so many things already imposed upon you that you've already done. That's gonna be very, very difficult to even look where the others are saying there are certain laws. I mean, even with Rambam, I'm getting now to me, what he was saying was almost like a preamble. These are the laws and these are the things, you know what, everybody can attain them, not easily, but we can change our self, look inwards to be able to fit to do these laws.
So what I take from it is, and I'll see if you agree, is that we don't exercise the muscle of freedom.
Freedom.
So many things are imposed upon ourselves, or we put ourselves into situations where so many things are decided for us.
We have to assign values to the things in our lives. And if you decide that this objective that you set yourself as an objective, you have to feel that it has value in your life and in
But we talk about being free. I mean, if you, in the morning, one of the first prayers that we say is, thank you, God, for making me free. B'nai Chorim. Right? Right? So like there is this idea that we are free, that we have free will, right? That our lives are not determined. Isn't that like one of our core values? And yet, what he's saying here, and I think there is truth to it, is like, there is a lot that we don't always realize that we have a greater ability to change and make choices, to break out of certain habits that we're in, or even potentially situations that we're in. Right? We feel constrained. We feel like this is what's expected of us. This is what's imposed upon us. These are our obligations. He's not saying here, God forbid, like you should break up your marriage or something. He's not saying that, right? But he's saying there are ways where we can express our freedom, and it's a muscle that we need. Actually, it's like we're required to work on.
If you're an observant Jew,
Yeah,
when are you free?
Never.
when are you free? You're free.
I
think
don't-
that-
I don't think so.
Yes, you are. You're free.
They think they are,
You're definitely free. Right? It depends what happens in your home. Right? How you live your life. Right? There are still, yes, there are a lot of your choices are made for you. But there's still a lot of other choices.
Well, and don't we often say that everything ultimately is a choice, and that's sort of driven home in the book we're reading now, Dvarim, because it's always, you know, choose life, choose, set up the curses on one mountain and the blessings on the other, and it's all about choice, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, any of these mitzvot you could choose to do or not do, and we're encouraged to choose to do them.
Yeah.
But you're free to make the choice. I think what he's saying therefore is that the opposite of freedom is ignoring that you have a choice and just continuing to do whatever you're doing without choosing.
Yes. So I want, if it's okay, I'd like to, and we'll see if this works. I'd like to share a little video from. Sorry, there's an ad. So this is not Torah, but this is.
It's not that luck and randomness and uncertainty don't play a role in life. They do. You know, luck is a part of all of our lives to a certain degree, both good fortune and bad. But by definition, you don't have control over luck. And your habits also matter. And I think that the reason they're so worthwhile to focus on and understand is that they are the portion of your life that you can influence.
Right, so this is from a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Tiny changes that create remarkable results, right? So how can we change? Is there an ability to change our lives? That's really what we're talking about. So we're gonna watch this short video, then you're gonna tell me what we studied and what does Judaism say, do we agree? Right, so what we missed already in his opening is that there are certain things in our lives we cannot control. Luck, randomness, and uncertainty in the world. But are there things that we can control, right? And he presented his idea, atomic habits, right? Habits are things that we have control over in this world.
That also determines your outcomes. It's not just luck, it's not just habits, but one of those you have control over. And so it makes sense. The only reasonable strategy is to focus on what you can control. If you spend all of your time focusing on things you can't control, then you're just gonna end up frustrated. And so I think habits are maybe the best lever for that. Talent and genes, they play a role, and it's important. You know, people have natural predispositions to things that make them better. But what you find is that nearly always when someone is a great performer in a particular domain, they are both well suited, so naturally talented or have some kind of predisposition to that area, and well trained.
Right, so we start like Maimonides here, right? There are certain predispositions that we have, environment, genetics, right? He says also innate talents, right? That's
a musician.
that's sort of,
Right.
but he says you need more, right? You can be the most talented musician, but never be a successful musician because you didn't have the other habits that got you there.
Practicing.
Right, for whatever, we can go through what those required habits are, right? But.
And so even if you are talented, you can't succeed without having great habits to execute and to fully realize the potential that you have. Your outcomes in life are often a lagging measure of your habits. You know, like a lot of the time people talk about, I want to have more money, or I want to lose weight, or I want some kind of result. But the truth is, your bank account is a lagging measure of your financial habits. Your weight is a lagging measure of your eating habits. Your knowledge is a lagging measure of your eating habits. And so it's actually, we think the thing that needs to change is the bank account or the test score or the number on the scale, but actually the thing that needs to change are the habits that precede those outcomes.
Right, so, right, again, we're sort of like beating a dead horse, right? But it's all about, if we need to change ourselves, We need to change our habits.
Every action you take is kind of like a vote for the type of person you want to become.
I thought that was like a really strong line, right? Every action that you take, you're voting for the person you want to become. Right? Don't just say like, I'm gonna change. Do it.
I had a student who said, doesn't talent count for anything? And my response was, talent is like a raw potato. You don't see people rushing around to eat raw potatoes, but to make that potato delicious, you have to do something to it. That
Yeah.
makes it delicious. And it's the same thing with talent.
Very well.
Yeah.
And if you can master the right actions, if you can master the right habits, then you can start to cast votes for this new identity, this desired person that you want to be. And I think that's one of the reasons why small habits matter so much. They don't necessarily transform your life overnight, right away. Like doing one push-up does not transform your body, but it does cast a vote for being the type of person who doesn't miss workouts. Or meditating for 1 minute might not give you an immediate sense of calm in your life, but it does cast a vote for being a meditator. The real goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is not to write a book. The goal is to become a writer. Because once you've adopted that identity, you're really not even pursuing behavior change anymore. You're just kind of acting in alignment with the type of person you already see yourself to be.
Okay, so I didn't talk about this, but a lot of what the rabbis talk about and even embedded in the sources that we looked at is, do I have the ability to become a new me? Right? I'm still Hal, but is it always that same Hal that's late to a meeting, that's, irresponsible, that is, not stingy, that's this, right? Or can I be a new Hal that is overly generous, that is prompt and is respectful to other people's times, right? That is, go down the list to all those qualities that I need to work on and build, right? Can I be the new me? And how do I get there, right? What are the steps required to get there? Right, so, right, you're acting in alignment with the type of person you already see yourself to be. Can I see myself as the Hal that's always early, that gets my work done, in advance, that, is responsive to emails? You go down the list, like what are the things that like bog me down that I get so upset about that then I get into this cycle, and I'm not really the best me, but can I actually start to do the act? So like respond to emails properly, right? Promptly and, do this and do that, right? What is that one or two actions that gonna start setting me on the way where I can see myself, yes, I'm gonna be the responsive person.
I don't need to get reinforced.
It's kind of like true behavior change is really identity change. Because once you've changed that internal story, it's way easier to show up each day. You're not even really motivating yourself that much to do it. You're just like,
Right? What do you think about that, right? True behavior change is identity change. When you see yourself different, right? I'm gonna be this new person. I'm gonna do it, right? This is, right? The new Hal responds to emails immediately, right? The new Hal comes 3 minutes early to a meeting.
But again,
Oops.
what bothers me, and maybe if they discuss it, you can shut me up.
Right, by the way,
But-
this is like a shorthand of his, you can read a book if you want to, yeah. This is his like 9-minute version of his book.
It's just, if you're not
an
you're
internal story.
harassment
Yeah,
by other people. In other words, you can come early,
yeah.
the other people don't show up. You're gonna just give up after a while.
Or you set the stage and set the expectations, right? So this is the other piece of it, right?
Yeah.
We've created this loop, right? Where there are low expectations, both on ourselves and other people, right? But if we start showing up and but they have to know that we were waiting, like I was waiting for you, right? And like, I only have an hour, like I have to leave now, sorry. Right, like say, like I came early, this is my new you can say this is my new expectation.
It's way easier to show up each day. You're not even really motivating yourself that much to do it. You're just like, this is who I am now. There's a sort of a misalignment of rewards that often happens with habits. So there's an immediate outcome, an immediate reward, and then an ultimate reward. And for your bad habits, one reason bad habits stick so readily, that they form so easily, is because bad habits, often the immediate reward is favorable, right? Like, what's the immediate reward of eating a donut? It's kind of great. It's sweet, it's sugary, it tastes good. It's only the ultimate reward, if you repeat that habit for 6 months or a year or 2 years, that is unfavorable. Meanwhile, good habits are often the exact opposite. The immediate reward of going to the gym, or going to the gym for like a week, isn't really that great. Your body's probably sore. You don't have much to show for it. Your body looks the same. Your weight hasn't really changed. But if you stick to that for 6 months or a year or 2 years, then the ultimate reward is favorable. And so a lot of the balance, or a lot of the challenge of building good habits and breaking bad ones, is figuring out how to pull the long-term costs of your bad habits into the present moment, so you feel a little bit of that pain right now and have a reason to avoid it, and pull the long-term rewards of your good habits into the present moment so it feels good and you have a reason to kind of make it through that like valley of death in the beginning and stick with it while you're waiting for those delayed rewards to accumulate. I think we could just summarize that whole cognitive bias or misalignment of rewards by saying the cost of your good habits is in the present and the cost of your bad habits is in the future.
Right, this is like an incredible, I think it's really powerful, right? We don't think about it, right? The cost of your good habit, right? It's gonna be difficult in the present. It's not gonna be easy, right? And that's also what the rabbis were saying, right? Like, this is hard work. If you want to change who you are, it's not easy in the beginning, right? Whether it's about becoming an exerciser or whether it's about becoming a more gracious person, right? You have to like work on yourself. Right?
Even
And
when
there
you're
might,
teaching small children, they say, a small child has to learn that you can defer things, that there would be a good outcome if they learn to defer.
right. Right, right. But bad habits are good in having a bag of potato chips at midnight, delicious, right? And then your stomach kills you in the morning, right? And like, it obviously doesn't look good on you, in a couple of days too, right? Right? I know, but the same thing, like, maybe stiffing someone $20 right now, whatever, like, oh yeah, I paid you already, whatever, right? Like, when you didn't, in the moment, yeah, I just made $20. But then later, right, like, there's repercussions if you didn't pay your bill.
Huge feeling.
Right, whether it's guilt or actually like they're after you, the creditors are after you or whatever else, right? Or you'll get a bad name, right? Nobody's gonna want to do business with you, right? So there are repercussions for all these things, yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't have to become left-handed, do we?
Apparently, yeah.
I don't know if in this book it touches on it, but what about if you lack self-esteem, self-confidence? And that could be some of the reasons why you have this habit. I don't know, like, as I say in this book, would it mention that sometimes you need outside help?
Definitely.
Make
yeah.
you
And
aware.
I'm not an expert.
You know
on
what
the
I
book.
mean? But I
Yeah.
meant,
So
doesn't
he
that
gives you
imply-
he gives a couple of ideas. Number one is optimize your environment, right? Like, place yourself in situations where the change is gonna be, there's gonna be open to change. So whether it means throwing out the potato chips and putting apples in front of you, right? So, think about if we're talking about qualities, now taking it away from health, but looking at soul traits, which was the opening and the idea of how we can change our insides, right? So whether it's, if we want to be a more generous person, right, we can start volunteering, like one volunteering thing at a moment, right? Or if we don't give to Machar, not that we don't, the synagogue doesn't even, right? But giving to Machar, right? Maybe I never gave to Machar, right? I'm gonna start giving $18, like an opening entry point, right? And then saying to yourself, next year I'm gonna give more, or I'm gonna start giving to other places. Right, so I'm not gonna go through the whole thing, but. Right, he talks about scale habits down, make them easily as possible. Right, so what's a realistic, if I'm gonna teach myself to not talk as much, or to listen more, right? Do it in small chunks, like tell yourself, right, that for this one conversation I'm gonna have, right? You know, you're gonna talk to this person, right? I'm gonna focus on listening and actually hear what they're saying and respond, right? So that's it. It's about
Not tempted.
scaling habits down to a 2-minute cycle. And he talks about there are entry points for different habits, right? What is that one thing that's gonna start my habit on a good foot? Right, so part of that is finding it and figuring and identifying it's identifying which of the soul traits or which habit we need to work on right now. Right, so maybe it's about being calm, not getting too upset about things. Right, so what's the entry point to that? Right, so then there's a lot more, but it ends with this quote. Sorry, you can't see it. Let me move this thing. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Here's your Aristotelian philosophy, David. Thank you, right? We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit. Right, so this, to me, this really fit into what I think the rabbis were saying, right? It's about habituating ourselves because habit leads to routine. And we have to find those habits that we have to work on and what's that entry point, right? I'm not immediately gonna be a person who is calm. Right? You gotta teach yourself to it and train yourself and not expect you're gonna be calm in the next day.
So things like, if you feel anger coming on, start counting to 10.
Yeah, right, but be realistic in our expectations. So if we have time, sorry, we're late, but I want to go to the last file.
From if I want to look at.
I just Googled atomic habits and you go to video and this is the third video if you want to watch and you can get the book also. But the idea is tiny changes are actually the way to help us. And that's what the rabbis always say, right? The tiny things that we do are actually the most significant that we do. One step at a time. And that's what tshuva is. Tshuva isn't this grand thing like the only way to be a new person is to see yourself there and then to start taking one step after the other to make us that new person. So this is the last text. It's a big text, but I just want to sort of look at the beginning of it, which is, someone want to read this as a close? All right.
The task of a person who suggests a parable is like that of a person who's building an elaborate house on a foundation of rubble. If he doesn't want to invest money and effort to dig deep and solid foundation, the building will not have a strong base and therefore cracks will keep appearing in the walls. Each time the person will have to spend a lot of money all over again in order to strengthen the building, and yet nevertheless, this will have no real utility because more fissures will appear and the house will always be in danger of collapse. There's only one path before him, and that is to have the courage to destroy the whole structure of the house and to dig deep and strong foundations. On top of those foundations, he can build and establish a strong building. The same applies in the realm of tshuva. Each year, a person introduces repairs and improvements in their spiritual home, but nevertheless, since the whole thing isn't built on strong foundations, new cracks and fissures appear year after year, and his spiritual structure always threatens collapse. Only when he arrives at a state in which he has courage and understands that all of these minor repairs will not solve the problem of his life until he digs deep foundations and first roots out the root that yields gall and wormwood, meaning the root of all evil, and he can build a structure that endures forever. This is the thought process with which a Jew must approach tshuva, to the point that the one who knows all secrets can testify on his behalf that this year he really wants to dig strong foundations for a spiritual home, foundations able to withstand life trials. And the foundation will not be rickety and the building will not.
So I actually think that this is another. These are all sort of the same, but they're different, right? Whereas Atomic Habits is, let's pick one thing that we can start on a really like digestible way, pick one habit that we want to improve and find what that entry point is and do it literally step by step, right? This is saying pretty much the opposite. This is saying you can't build a new you on top of faulty foundation, right? If you don't have good habits, right? You need to start from scratch, right? You need to rip out the beams, you know, this now we use the home renovation things, right? Your wall, your floorboard, your subfloorboard is moldy and warped. You gotta rip out the whole floor and put in a new floor, right? So this is the question is, do we have to, are we personally at a point where we have to go deep? So much of ourselves is warped, or are we at the place where we can identify one, two qualities that we want to hone in on, find that entry point, this is getting back to the Atomic Habits, right? Find that entry point, find a digestible way that we can build up that trait to get to that level that's sort of on the intermediate, what the ideal is. Comments, thoughts, are you ready?
Well, can I say something?
Yeah.
I think that these are two different extremes,
100%, yeah, they are,
okay?
yeah,
Like if you are a smoker and
Yeah.
they tell you you're going to have lung cancer, it's starting now. You stop to smoke right away.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
taking everything from the scratch, from the bottom.
yes,
On the other hand, if you have differences like no patience and stuff like this, you can try and start slowly and slowly. So it depends also
On
on
what
the,
we're doing.
yeah,
Yeah, but some
yeah.
people have.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, right, these are very different. These are very different, so like if I'm gonna give you a challenge or two, challenge one is,
Hmm?
you know, identify that habit. You can take the soul trait quiz if you want, it's americanmussar.com. Or just look up Greg Marcus and Mussar, Mussar. You can take it and it can identify which traits are, are high and which traits you need to work on. And that actually, I think that website then gives you some actual practical, exercises to work on it. Mussar, Mussar.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna give you one other sort of challenge, which is, last year, YU and the Rabbi Sachs Center put out this 10 challenges for the holidays. And I like the first quite, if you can find it if you want, just Google 10 challenges Yeshiva University. They probably have a lot of challenges, but, so this is something else I want to think about, as a close. Name a river you must cross this year. Which challenges in your life require fresh perspectives to overcome them? Based on this quote from Rabbi Sachs at Blessed Mary. Crises happen when we attempt to meet the challenges of today with the concepts of yesterday. Right, so again, this gets into the same idea, right? As we begin the new year, we can't look at this year like we did last year. Right, think about it, last year, pre-October 7th, right? We were different people. The world was different, right? Like, what are the challenges that we're going to face this year? And the same me last Rosh Hashanah may not, I need to be a different me this year. And we can say that really for the same thing with everything, whether we're talking about our marriages, how we parent, how we're a friend, how we're a coworker, right? The same me from last year it's not gonna work. Maybe I was good then. Maybe I was excellent then, right? But this is a different year
Mhm.
and we need to be a different me. However we are. So with that, I wish you a Shana Tova, both a good year and a good change. And thanks for learning with me. Yeah.
Comment in
Yes.
relation to what you just said about crossing the river. As we leave the shul, we can each cross the Jordan River.
Yes.
And I
Yes,
wonder
yes,
how many
yes, yes.
people are aware of that beautiful art
Beautiful,
display in
very
front. We can cross the Jordan.
Yeah, not
right
like
now.
Moshe though. Moshe couldn't, but we can. Yeah, amen. All right, well, thank you, Shana Tova. See if the holidays are sooner. Our boomers